Hello. Welcome to Kill the Bottle Podcast. Eddie's More, aka the Yum Yum Foodie. If you notice the amount of silence that's happening right now, that's because Megan is not here with me. You know, if Megan was here right now, she would not shut up. She'd be interrupting the entire time. But Megan is on assignment. I have a very special episode today. I am sitting, if you hear a little bit of an echo, guys, that is not the emptiness in my brain. That is the emptiness in the cellar where I'm recording this episode now. In fact, I'm in the cellar, Beverly Hills, a really beautiful facility that houses a lot of amazing wine. Thankfully, there's a lot of good security because this is a lot of very expensive wine that I am surrounded by. Speaking of amazing and expensive wine, it's a really special show today. We are here drinking very special wine. I'm going to say it a million times because I've been so excited to get to try this wine before. But sitting with me, he happens to be in town for a few days, is Executive Vice President Angelus America, Mr. Yves De Launay. Did I say that correctly? Or?
Absolutely correct. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Eddie. Great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking a little time out of your busy day. I know you're on a very busy schedule. Yves just told me that he lives in Miami now, and I can tell because he's got a nice tan about him. It's you always can tell when French people leave and they're not in the south of France. You can tell they moved to South Florida because they have that. There's a certain glow that you have. So I gotta appreciate it. Speaking of glow, what are we drinking today?
So today we're drinking Chateau Angelus 2015 vintage.
2015 vintage, and so this was just recently decanted. I mean, from my novice nose, it's extremely fragrant. The bouquet on this is just, it's elegant. I can still tell because Yves was telling me before we started that this could probably still use a few hours of decanting. That it's still a little tight, probably, but. It is a special bottle of wine. What made you choose 2015 for us to sip today?
It's a great vintage. It's a vintage where everything was actually perfect. The wine growing, which is the most important. When you make a grand vin, has to be perfect. And that year we had sun when we needed to have sun, we had rain when we needed to have rain. And we, at harvest time, we had grapes in absolutely beautiful conditions with a nice ripeness, and ended up to be, clearly a wine and a vintage that will be iconic vintage, a vintage that's actually really nice to enjoy today, as you will see, but also vintage, obviously, you can keep for a long time,
Yeah, just on my initial sip, it's the... it's a really... One thing I always characterize from my experience when I have very, very premium wines from Bordeaux is there's a certain silkiness and elegance in the tannins where, for example, if I'm having something from, let's say, Tuscany that's in, Bondisanti or one of those things, the tannins are like, boom, right in your face, even though, you're drinking a $300 bottle of Brunello. Something about the French, about Bordeaux in particular to me, is that refinement, that elegance. No pressure having to be
but
VP.
You're absolutely right, actually,
VP.
because really what we're trying to achieve in every wine that we make is to find actually this balance between the structure, the power, but ultimately, we want to have this elegance, this acidity, this tension, that support all the fruits and the tannins, mostly the tannins from the wood. Have to be there, but they cannot mask, the fruit, and that's really what the Chateau and Hubert de Bois and Stéphanie de Bois, the 7th and the 8th generation, have been working on to find this right balance, and in order to have wine which has harmony, and that's really the case on this 2015, where you have actually the tannin are there, but they're already, although it's a fairly young wine, it's only 9 years old, you have tannins which are very silky. We like to describe them as, cashmere. And
Yeah, I get that, and so that's where I get a little bit deterred sometimes in a good way, because for example, this is such a beautiful, elegant wine. Why would I ever want to order this in a restaurant if it's going to take 2 hours to decant? Because there's no way I'm going to sit at the bar. By the time I'm done waiting 2 hours, I'm hammered, and I'm not even going to enjoy this wine anyway. Is this the kind of thing where you go to the restaurant ahead of time that you trust and say, Mr. Sam, can you open this at 5 p.m. and I'll be at my dinner at 7:30?
You can, but 2 hours obviously is the ideal time right now to decant the wine. At the same time, we just decanted this wine like a short period. 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And frankly, already we can see the tannins are there, but they're integrated. Already. The thing I think which strikes me with every vintage of Angelus, but specifically on this 2015, is actually what I was mentioning. This freshness that you want to have, even in a young age. And this freshness is really, the signature in a way of Angelus and this elegance, and that's brought by the Cabernet Franc. The signature of Angelus is really the high proportion of Cabernet Franc. In this specific vintage, in the 2015, we have about 40% Cabernet Franc.
Wow.
The rest of the balance is Merlot. We have the perfect terroir for Cabernet Franc, and the Cabernet Franc is really what brings the spiciness, the creaminess, but also this freshness and these kind of notes of menthol that you have, and it gives also an ability to age for the wine, which is fantastic. And you can have some. I can tell you that you can have this wine now, which is very enjoyable, but you can have it in 50 years from now, and it's still gonna be vibrant.
I'm curious because Saint-Emilion. It's for those of you who don't know about wine, and I don't mean that, and I'm not trying to insult you by saying that. I'm saying Bordeaux can be very intimidating for somebody who is from the United States and doesn't understand how to read a label, or you know how to read, but you don't know how to make the distinctions on the label of French wine. Something from Saint-Emilion is going to be more Merlot based, where something from, say, Pauillac is going to be more Cabernet based. You mentioned 2015 being a really good year. Is that specific to East Bank and West Bank, or is it really just kind of across the board in Bordeaux in general?
Across the board, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It was really the condition that year were, again, perfect, which rarely happens now. Actually, when you look at all these past vintages, it's a result of the climate change in a way. You have a lot of violent episodes sometimes where you have frost, you have hail, you have drought sometimes, or on the contrary, too much rain. 2015, you had nothing of that. It was a dream for any winemaker. I mean, if you take this year, for instance, our team had to be in a vineyard constantly, doing all kind of adjustment to make sure that, you arrive at harvest with the best possible grapes, 2015, everything was like, smooth, easy. I'm not saying that they were relaxing, but it was actually quite an easy year to make a good wine, and anyone could make a good wine in a way.
Well, they refer to wines from Europe as old world wines versus, here in the United States more the new world wines. Is there a bit of, or how is there new world technology being used into the old world style of wines, as far as like measuring, vineyard individual hectare climate, whatever it's.
Yeah, it's actually thanks for asking the question. It's actually very important. Obviously, we are a vineyard. We've been with the same family for 8 generations, 240 years. There's a lot of tradition, but tradition without modernity is nothing. And so there's a lot of understanding of what's happening in a vineyard, what's happening on the not only on the vine, but also underground, and that's actually quite important, more especially with the old vines that we have. We have vines which are in average 40 years old. So there's a lot of research happening there. And then obviously after, in a winemaking process, then the technology also happened at that, at that stage. We are currently actually about to finalize a new cellar, and with talking about technology, where you have tronco-conical vats inverted. It sounds very complicated, but that pretty much means that the vats will be filled from the top and allow everything will fall by gravitation, allowing more extraction of the aromas, and that's what's happening. So pretty much when you're going to be working in our cellars in a year from now, you're going to have to look at the ceilings, and all the vats will be suspended, and that's a quite talking about innovation. That's something which is quite new. We already actually were I believe part of the first one to do it for Carillon, which is the second wine of Angelus, and now our cellar of Angelus also will have this technology. So that's what's happening, for instance, in the cellars. Also, different kind of evolution of technology, in the vats that we are using, mostly the wood that we're using. For the Cabernet Franc, half of the wood that we're using actually are larger vats, which we call foudre. And this larger vat allows more aromatic expressions, finer tannins, and that's why you have a one which is so elegant. So that's what's happening after harvesting. before harvesting, you have a lot of technology as well. We combine actually heritage and technology. For instance, we still have horses, that work in the vineyards, but at the same time, we also have electrical tractors, which actually much nicer for the team because it's not as noisy, but also limiting the decompacting of the soil and so on.
Yeah, it's funny. Because, from my consumer palate, I always aligned with French wine in the sense that French wine is a wine that I didn't need to have with food to enjoy it, and that's the biggest compliment for me to a wine. I could just and almost to be completely honest, I don't know if I want to have any food with this because I just think it tastes so fucking good that I'm almost feeling like I'd be doing a disservice to it to bastardize it with some blue cheese or something, but.
Well, you can have food. That's also part of the reason why Stéphanie Debois, when she took over from her dad in 2012, she really expanded. Not only making a great wine, but also actually having restaurants. So we do have actually 2 Michelin-star restaurants because there was also the feeling actually, which is slightly different from what you just said, that a good wine also deserves to have.
It complements the food, sure.
Great food, complemented food, but also having great company, obviously, and so that's why hospitality has been part of the development of the chateau, with these 2 Michelin-star restaurants in Saint-Émilion and in Bordeaux, and also with some boutique hotel that we have.
Very cool. Now, so I always suggest to people, I say if you get behind the wheel of a Ferrari as your first car. It's kind of ruin everything else for you, right?
I agree.
So this is on that level of caliber. It's a premier Grand Cru Classé. It's a very special wine, and I'll ask you in a second about what that designation means and just how proud you have to be aligned and affiliated with with a winery that does that. But for your standard consumer, what is a suggestion maybe of how to introduce yourself into Bordeaux to then build to drink this wine as your New Year's wine, let's say?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of diversity in wines in Bordeaux actually, and it's interesting because we do at Angelus produce a lot of different type of wines with different characteristics. So we were talking about Angelus, which has a high proportion of Cabernet Franc and obviously a lot of aging, an average 20 months. And so wine which obviously, has great complexity and elegance, but we also have wines, to get you there, So we produce a wine which is a Bordeaux wine coming from 15 minutes from Saint-Émilion and the Côte de Castillon and Côte de France. It's called Tempo. And Tempo is a wine where there's no aging in wood. So it's only in stainless steel vats, mostly Merlot. It's a wine which is, very easy access wine that you can open, without thinking too much. It's a wine which also very, much more friendly in a way for your wallet because it's a wine that retails for less than $30. Mm-hmm. So that's your kind of entry to the world of Angelus. It's made with the same care, same attention, same expertise as Angelus, but obviously a wine which has, a more broader, in a way, appeal, if, more especially if you're not yet into the Grand Vin. And then from there, you have obviously a few other wines, including Carillon I was mentioning, which is our second wine, but not really second wine because Stéphanie, when she joined in 2012, wanted to make it a wine with a separate identity. So it's a wine which has a very different blend. It has separate vineyards. You have a blend which has mostly Merlot, and it's a wine where the aging also is slightly different. So it's a wine that you can really enjoy a bit sooner, usually between 5 and 10 years. And that's, again, another kind of, step towards, Angelus that you can open in a special occasion, obviously.
Yeah, how do you approach, because you are here in the United States, how do you approach the American consumer that unfortunately, was swayed by watching the movie Sideways and are anti-Merlot people? I have a funny story about that of a sommelier that I met here in Los Angeles and how he would, trick people into drinking Merlot. But How do you approach that conversation where you have people that already have this predisposed notion that they think that Merlot is not great? Mind you,
I think the truth is
some
in
of the greatest
bottle.
wines in the world, which we're having right now, is Merlot based.
I think the truth is in the bottle. When you open a bottle, and that's what we do. When you open a bottle and you test our different wines and understand what each grape is bringing to the final blend. I think that's how you do the demonstration, and how you show how you can reach some wines where you have the fruits, you have this the acidity that allows you to have a very enjoyable time and actually even emotion when you test the wine.
Yeah, I think I want to see a video done where they just fly a bunch of people, like people that say I don't like Syrah, and they just take them to L'Hermitage and they go through this whole experience and they just drink L'Hermitage for like a week, and then all of a sudden you're going to see they have no idea that they're drinking Syrah and they're in love with it. And I almost feel like France has probably really benefited for the fact that it's named for. It's not named after the grape the way that they do here in the United States, because I guarantee you people just, so many people are like, this wine is excellent, order it. And in their mind, they're like, I don't like Merlot. They drink this. They didn't even know they were drinking Merlot.
Yeah, I think it's important
predominantly Merlot.
I agree. I think it's important to break these preconceived, ideas on the grapes, on the blend, also on the vintage sometimes, quite often, you hear people who only swear by these iconic vintages. So 2015 clearly would be part of it.
Yeah.
Like 2000, 2005, 2009, 2015, and 16. I think the characteristic of a Grand Vin is to produce an outstanding wine that will give you emotion in every year. And in fact, 2015 was, I was mentioning, a very easy year. In terms of wine, making or production, wine growing, vintages which are more challenging. This is really what you recognize, the great terroir, and that's also where the human touch is becoming more important. What you do before harvest to mitigate every possible, challenge that you face, whether it's too much rain or too much heat, or hail sometimes, or frost. How what you do in the vineyards to achieve grapes at harvest time, which will have the right ripeness, concentration, and everything to start there. I would say actually 80% of the work is already done there. The rest is in a way much easier.
Yeah, I was recently at an education about Chablis, and they were diving into the region and all of the essentially little townships within those spaces and how it's named this from here and Chablis is this and this, and they were already starting to take. By the way, there's a little. I'm going to turn the microphone. That was some wine ASMR. I wanted to pour myself some wine a while ago, but this decanter is so massive, and I would be scared shitless to break it. So thankfully, Yves did that for me.
I took the risk.
He took the risk. But they're already taking precautions based on global warmings. You were mentioning hail and frost, and that's just any weather. But is there anything being done in Bordeaux, whether it's buying property a little bit further north now that you're going to start planting in because you're seeing a shift in weather, or a little bit further south, or is there any of that being done?
I think we have to differentiate first of all global warming and climate change. Global warming, I guess it's more true for the Mediterranean side. In Bordeaux, it's more climate change. So all these, episode that I was mentioning, it's really the result of the climate change. And it's true that, you have some terroirs actually which are quite interesting that have not been yet necessarily fully, known from the greater public. Stephanie, when she arrived, acquired a lot of vineyards in, I was mentioning, Côte de Castillon, Côte de France, where we make a Tempo, our wine, for instance. These terroirs are great. They have the mix of clay, limestone, and also the influence, of the river that allow you to make some great wines. Not only red, but in fact white. And that's something the Chateau has started to do in the last 8 years now, to plant some white grapes. Not only the Bordeaux white grapes, I'm talking about the Sauvignon Blanc and the Sémillon, but also some Chardonnay, some Chenin, and we produce wine which are the blends of these 4 grapes, which are absolutely splendid. Unfortunately, we don't sell them in the US. Most of them still small production, and we open them at carefully with some friends at the chateau. But it's really kind of a reflection of what you were mentioning. How we can explore, innovate, try something different, and produce some other wine that we are not thinking of producing, maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago.
So what you're saying is, Eddie, when you're in Europe next summer, you really need to come to Chateau Angelus so you can try.
Enjoy your white wine, absolutely.
So I can enjoy a red wine. So right now I'm having a brain fart. Is Saint-Emilion East Bank or West Bank?
Right bank.
Right bank. So
yeah.
Right bank. Sorry, not right or left. So. Is there any reason terroir-wise why it's predominantly Merlot on the right bank and Cabernet on the left bank?
It's really a question of the terroir, the soil. When you look at, for instance, Angelus, we have it's kind of a natural amphitheaters. The vineyards. So on the hills, you have a soil which is the clay, the blue clay, which is very famous for Pomerol. The blue clay, which has very cold, soil, and perfect for the Merlot.
So a lot of carbon in the soil?
Not necessarily carbon, but it's the characteristic of the clay, a bit of iron as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And on the foot of the hill, you have the limestone, and that's actually perfect terroir for the Cabernet Franc. So that type of soil is really characteristic of where we are. In Saint-Emilion, not everybody has this limestone, and that's why you can also find some Cabernet Sauvignon in some blends of Saint-Emilion sometimes. But for us, it's really this terroir characteristic that is very appropriate. We feel for both the Merlot and the Cabernet Franc.
Yeah, I mean, when I guide my friends into French wine, well, specifically Bordeaux, when I guide them in that direction, I usually will send them to Saint-Emilion first. Yes, because I find that Merlot is the most approachable to the palate for the American taste, even though they love to say they drink their 100% Cabernet from Napa. I think when you're thinking European wine, Merlot, in the mindset of thinking France and elegance and what the perception is, Saint-Emilion is kind of where I guide them first, and then of course they'll explore and try other wines from the left bank. What brought you to where you are now? Because what did you want to be when you were a kid? Where were you born?
I was born and raised in Paris, so far from the vineyards. Although I grew up always having a bottle of wine on the table, and at a very young age I was already exposed to wine, not necessarily to the great wines, but exposed to wine, and then I decided to learn more, and that's how I developed a taste for it, a passion for it, and doing what I'm doing now.
What did you study in school?
I study agronomy. Okay. So I'm technically an engineer, in agronomy. So specializing in viticulture and oenology. So it was really my academic foundation to do what I'm doing today. When I was studying in France, and quickly I came to the US and started to and I pretty much never left, and now I'm here.
Now, I always ask this of more, for some reason, more specifically people in wine, because I always find that everybody that's in wine had kind of a light bulb moment. There was one wine that they tried, there was one meal that they had where they tried a particular wine, and it kind of changed their perception. Whether not the perception, but it maybe just opened their eyes. It's kind of like maybe you're looking at the world through dirty glasses, and that wine is what cleaned your glasses for you. Well, do you have a wine that you drank one time that did that for you? It doesn't have to be wine. It could be a spirit.
No, I think it was more a moment. When I first came to the US, I was doing an internship. I was actually working on a promotional campaign for Bordeaux at the time, so for the CIBC, and at the time I was helping. A wine class called Windows on the Wall that was done by Kevin Zwally. It was on top of the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
and
the world.
And I was there, and I was actually serving the wine for all the people who were there. Paying a lot of money actually to have this class, and I was actually learning also and a lot actually thanks to this class, and I got a chance to test great wines,
Mm-hmm.
And I have these memories, at the time I was 25 years old and tasting some great bottles of Bordeaux, first growth, and realizing, how fantastic it was. And from there, I realized that, I was also invited to auctions on the weekend, or I was inviting myself to auction on the weekend. And before every auction, you could test some of the lots that were offered. And again, I was like, tasting this incredible wine, at 25 years old, that obviously I could not afford, and that really kind of, opened my eyes on, how great it was, and that's how pretty much everything started, in that environment.
Are you of the mindset of collecting wine, or are you of like, I have a couple of bottles that I'm holding on to, and everything else I'm just fucking drinking it?
And I'm collecting. I've been buying wine forever.
Okay.
And so that, that's something that I like to do. And actually, I think the pleasure of wine is to be able to go in your cellars and find some bottles that you sometimes forgot and open them. And the whole pleasure is about, sharing them. So I think what I've noticed, with many collectors, they always share two things. First of all, they're passionate about it. So they really, want to know more, discover more. There's always something to learn. There's always a new vintage, always a new wine. But also, you really are quite generous, and that's something that I think it's a common thread. And wine is about, conviviality, sharing, and that's really what, it's all about. So.
Yeah, that's sincerely, that's one thing I would actually like to encourage, you guys listening. The wine I'm drinking now it is a very special bottle of wine. If you have been in the process of studying wine, kind of exploring wine, and you say to yourself, you know what, maybe this year I'm going to get together, a bottle's got 4 glasses. I'm going to get with 4 of my friends, and we're going to pick up something very special, or we're going to pick up a handful of special bottles, and we're going to try them. I would highly encourage, if you can get your hands on it. My friends in Miami, I know you can find this at a Carajo, because I've seen it there, and it's just fun for me to tell people to go to a place called Hell to get wine. But really definitely put Angelus on your radar, because I'm just so. It is such a fucking delicious bottle of wine, and to think it's only been open for 30
minutes. Yeah. But you know what? It's a good way to create memories. You should not wait for an occasion to open a great bottle of wine. I think you should open a great bottle of wine, and that creates like a great, occasion, memories, and that's something that you always remember. And that's the beauty of wine. Really.
I have a confession. I am still yet to have a first growth. I've never tried a first growth wine. So guys, first growth, don't be perverts. That's not what I'm talking about. First growth meaning Chateau Latour, Chateau Rothschild, some of like the
left bank, yeah.
Yeah, some of those guys that have that label of first growth. I'm yet to have one. So I'm curious, because at one point I'm sure I'll end up trying like a newer vintage, and I'll be like, this is not ready. Why are you letting me drink this? This tastes like green bell pepper, and it's just that the pyrazines are still like super strong in this wine. But whatever. You were mentioning that kind of vintage prejudice where people will be like, no, I only want these iconic vintages. I remember 1999. Spring Mountain Vineyard in Napa Valley. I used to be a member at this winery, and they make Bordeaux style wines. That is mountain fruit. That was what kind of actually opened my palate to exploring some of the old world wines, in the sense where I met the winemaker, and he was inspired by some of the wines from the left bank. And this 99 vintage, first time I tried it, it tasted like literally like you were biting into a bell pepper, and it was gross. Fast forward 6 or 7 years later, I'm at the winery again, and they crack open the 99. This must have been 2015, 2016. It was a completely different wine. Absolutely. It was like you punched me in the face and just said, no, this is it. Like you swap the bottle and put a different bottle there, and all of a sudden it became not this, but it became something otherworldly, and it was really fun for me to see that level of change in the bottle, not in the barrel, but in the bottle.
The bottle. Yeah, no, absolutely. The aging obviously is very key, and it's true for every wine, and some of the wine are very kind of austere, at a young age. You have the tannins, it can be dry, it's not very enjoyable. I think in Bordeaux and Angelus specifically, we really trying to avoid that nowadays, and making sure that we still, the wood is not masking everything. But it's true that this bottle of 2015 that you would have tasted maybe 3 years ago today and in 5 years, I mean, there's an evolution there, and it's gonna give you different kind of pleasure, different kind of characteristic, and you need to, give it a little bit of age. And the best thing to do is actually to, when you have a case, to open a bottle, occasionally, and you see how the wine is evolving, and that's quite interesting. It's interesting also sometimes to compare vintages, and fast forward, or on the contrary, go backward and try some other vintages and see how they evolve. And from 1 year to another year, it can be very different. Testing today 2015 and let's say the 2014, which is only 1 year, so it's not much. But the wine are a totally different stage of their, life, maturation, and
how much of that is winemaker, and how much of that is the weather of that grape that year?
It's a bit of both, actually.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a way the wine is being made, but obviously every year brings its characteristic, and so some vintages, because of the characteristic of the year, are not supposed to be. Don't necessarily need to have that much aging or more aging than they should. 2014 is a great example. 2011 now is actually in a beautiful stage as well. And that's the one that would, you don't need to wait 20 years to enjoy it. You can enjoy it in 10 years from now. There's no problem. But it's going to give you a lot of, what you're expecting from a great Bordeaux and a great bottle of Angelus in that specific, vintage.
Is there kind of a standardized amount of years? And what I'm referring to is, from my experience with Barolo, which out of all the Italian wines, that's my personal favorite. I love Nebbiolo. It's like I'm a fan of that grape. And I tend to not drink a Nebbiolo. I mean, I'll drink a Nebbiolo if it's not from Barolo, younger. If it's from one of the outskirt regions. But if I'm drinking it from a great producer in Barolo, I don't want it to be younger than 8 years. That is like the start point for me. Is there kind of a generic year start point where you're like, all right, now is when the wine should start to shine, and you'd be doing it a disservice to open it too soon?
It really depends on the vintage. I was mentioning, Carillon, for instance. Carillon, we do believe that, you can enjoy Carillon between 5 and 10 years, that you don't need to necessarily wait, longer. Angelus, it depends on the vintage. Some vintage, like right now, some vintage like 2009, in comparison, is still a bit more tight compared to 11 or 14 that I was mentioning, or even
wild.
15.
Yeah.
And so it's really a case by case year. I mean, every vintage is different. Some needs a bit more time to, open up. So there's no rule really per se.
Got it. Yeah, well, I'm always wondering, because imagine you have this bottle, or you're a lawyer and somebody gives you this bottle and you're like, oh fuck, I don't even know what this is. I don't know when to open. I go on the website and I'm like, well, shoot, I see how much it costs. Yeah, I got that. I see that it's X amount of years, but I'm like, do I take it to the restaurant? Do I open? How old is it? Is the cork gonna crumble? Do I need an also? Like, what if There's so many factors involved, and I think that's part of why. That's why so many times, and it's something that I battle with people with wine, is they keep on buying like the same 4 producers that are making the same wine that is designed to taste like it did the year before, even though they're different vintages, and they're just like and I'm being more specific with California wines, more specifically Caymus, because I think it's fucking ridiculous, and it's just me. Sorry guys, if you like Caymus, God bless you, it's your money, spend it on it, but I'd rather go and support another winery. What is the perception in Man, I'm fighting myself. So
I think you have to. I think you have to.
I'm like fighting myself here.
No, I think you have to explore. With wine, you cannot be stuck with one type of wine. Each wine has a different characteristic. It's actually great to create some different benchmarks. Of what it could look like, when to drink it, with what. You have some fantastic Beaujolais, for instance, where you're going to have a lot of fruits, very vibrant.
Yeah, don't age that. Drink it right away.
Within Bordeaux, Chateau Angelus is obviously has different characteristics compared, to some of the first growths that you were mentioning on the left bank. Very different from Burgundy, obviously, very different from California. I think you need to, have a palette of what you know. And also educate in a way your palate to learn to discover, each characteristic, and then your palate actually can also evolve.
Of course, yeah.
What you may like when you are 25 years old will be different.
You're not drinking Jack Daniels anymore?
Not anymore, but I used to actually.
No, so it's like, yeah. Now I can't even smell it, so I understand completely.
But that's the thing. Your palate evolve, and I think the more you try to have diversity, and the more you learn what you like, what you don't like, when to have it, and I was mentioning Tempo. Tempo is a wine typically which is very different from Angelus, but at the same time it's part of the same family, and you can have that anytime. And then you can switch to having some wine from Rioja. You can, there's so much diversity in wine, different grapes, different style, different producers. It's you don't want to limit yourself. It's a shame to limit yourself to only one type of few producers.
When you're not drinking Bordeaux, what are you drinking?
I love champagne personally.
Okay. Yeah.
And champagne is not an easy wine
are you a Blanc de Blanc kind of guy? Or are you a Brut Rosé? What's your?
I love everything that champagne can offer. From a Brut non-vintage to a vintage to some rosé, some of the beautiful prestige cuvées. Some types like the Blanc de Blanc, where you have this elegance, the beauty of the Chardonnay. So you have so much, nuances that you can see. It's not necessarily a very accessible category in a way that, you have the acidity, the effervescence that kind of, could first kind of mask a little bit, everything else. But when you take the time to explore what that region can offer, and the impact of the vintage as well, and the different types and the blend, it's extremely rich and can give you a lot of pleasure, and can be very food friendly as well. So champagne is another category which is close to my heart.
I made it wasn't a fatal mistake, but I was one of my introductions into wine was when I started here in Los Angeles as an actor, and as an actor you start working in catering, you work at restaurants, and I worked up an Oscars party, and the house champagne was Krug Grand Cuvée. And that has become my favorite.
That was a good party.
Yeah, that was so. The 1983 Krug also that I got to try that day was the greatest champagne I've ever tried. And that's my white whale. That's Moby Dick. That's a champagne that I'll be chasing for the rest of my life, wanting to try it again. Do you have a champagne that is your white whale?
I have a lot of champagne that I really love. You mentioned Krug. Actually, I'm personally a big fan of Krug.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm very close to Olivier Krug, who I know for a long time, and this house has been producing amazing champagne, for a long time, and again, strong tradition, strong craftsmanship. Also having the same thing than Angelus, in terms of vinification, everything is vinified plot by plot. And that really allows you to be very precise in what you do. So Angelus shared that actually with the Krug, is this vinification where every plot is vinified separately and allows to really take the best of each parcel that you have.
Now, it's just the only reason I say is because I know several winemakers here in California, and they'll have the app on their phone, letting them know the frost is coming in. Everybody get your ass up, kind of thing. Are we doing the same thing in Bordeaux, where we're using that technology of the app letting the winemaker know, like, everybody's got to get your butt out there, kind of thing?
No, absolutely. Yeah, of course you have to. You have to be on top of what weather you're going to have, and frost is a threat. It's a threat that can be easily mitigated. So for instance, this year in April we had a lot of very cold nights, but so to do that, we have some wind turbines that we can activate in the vineyards that kind of mix the air and allow us to not have frost. We also lit some candles, which is beautiful, but keeps everyone awake all night long. So it's not so fun when you have to do it. But it's the frost impact, at least for us, is limited because we can we have all these ways to fight it. But yes, of course, we monitor very closely all the climatic conditions, whether it's the frost, the hail. Same, we can also hail our ways to combat the hail. where so now we don't have this really issue anymore. But there's some technology there to avoid having hail, destroying your crop pretty much.
Which is funny, I forgot. I should have asked you this at the beginning of the show, but I'm going to ask you now. What brought you to LA for these few days? So you obviously you're in Miami, but what brought you 5.5 hours west? Right now you're missing all the rain.
Yes,
from that terrible hurricane. Yes, my father still lives in South Florida. My brothers live in Central Florida, so everybody's okay. But what brought you to town?
Yeah, it was not the weather. No, what brought me here is we still have to make sure that our wine is in the right place in terms of the right restaurant, the right retailers, and we have to tell our stories. We had I had some dinners in the past couple of days, with some end consumers, and opening a bottle of wine, testing different vintages, and telling the story of Angelus, and that people might or might not know, and that's what we do, and also sitting together and sharing a great bottle and talking to a larger audience. That's also part of what we still have to do.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I started this podcast was because I'm so blessed to have so many great experiences going to wineries, talking to winemakers, talking to people that are on the ground, picking the grapes, talking to people working the machinery, and it's really an opportunity to share those stories and which is very different than the spirit world. I work in the world of rum, and I love rum, but wine is truly that time capsule. It's that 1 year, that whole bottle of memories encapsulated in one thing, and it's something you can't get back. You can make a bottle of whiskey to taste like it did the year before. At the end of the day, that's with cognac, they're doing the same thing. They're blending, they're making it taste very, a very specific. You get one of my favorite cognacs, Hennessy XO. It's made to taste like I bought it 4 years ago, or if I bought the new one, this year, right? But wine creates that world. So I'm very grateful that you've been here to kind of to share your story a little bit. The show's called Kill the Bottle. If you were going to kill a bottle of Chateau Angelus, what would be the bottle you're going? Anyone, could be any vintage, anything that you've had. And this is the one that you're going to kill. Which one is it going to be? You can share it. I wouldn't suggest it, but you can share it.
No, it's a tough question. There's so many great vintages for each different characteristic. I recently had in the last few weeks, I had 2 vintages for me, which was absolutely 3 vintages, I would say, which was absolutely incredible. And vintages, some of them with a very high reputation. In terms of perfect year and iconic years, and some actually not necessarily so, that nobody really was dreaming about that year. So the one that was incredible vintage was the 89. That bottle of wine was absolutely extraordinary.
I think it's because the Berlin Wall fell, and they're like, you know what? The wine is just going to be good this year. It was an air of joy throughout Eastern Europe that made its way to France.
Who knows? But the one is just extraordinary. And then the 2 vintages actually I recently tested, which are not vintages that people necessarily, was mentioning. People get stuck a little bit sometimes on the great vintages. These 2 vintages, nobody really paid attention to them, for a long time. It was the 2001 and 2007. These vintages are absolutely incredible now, in terms of complexity, in terms of elegance, in terms of what you expect, from aromatic expression, tertiary aromas, and that's really. On recently, some amazing vintages that I had, but more recently, I was mentioning 2011. It's the same. 2011 after 2009 and 2010, 2 great vintages. Nobody were really paying attention to 2011. It was not, showing necessarily particularly well. Just when it was, en primeur, when it was still young. Today, this bottle is actually fantastic, and I think it's a bottle that you want to, have, and it's a bottle that you can find actually in.
Does a day go by where you don't have wine? Does a day go by where you do not have a glass of wine or a taste of wine?
It does happen, but I'm lucky to.
But is it a conscious effort where you're like, today I'm not going to have?
No, it happens. Sometimes you just have to patch yourself a little bit, And
not on the
but
show,
I'm
but yes.
lucky to obviously, get a chance to enjoy a great wine of Angelus, but also, meeting with people who have this passion and test also other, wine from different regions or different, from different chateaus.
Yeah, I think there's nothing funner to me than on this show in particular, seeing my co-host Megan try a wine that will kind of open her eyes because she knows more about spirits per se than she does wine, and I'm always talking to her about wine. So it's always fun to have that experience, and you get to see that firsthand traveling the country, seeing people try. This wine maybe for the first time, maybe them in their mind thinking they don't like 2015, and then they try it again and they're like, ah, shit, you got me. So not France. If you're killing a bottle of wine from anywhere else, what bottle? And if you know the vintage, tell me the vintage so I can look for it too. Because, I keep a checklist.
I had a great experiences of in every region around the world because there's really great wines, produced everywhere. In Italy, I have some amazing memories of, some Maceto, some very old vintages of Maceto. In California, some of the old vintages of the Heights vineyards in the 70s, which were absolutely incredible,
I had a 78 Joseph Phelps a few months ago that when I'm telling you, I was, because there's a misconception that some of these old California wines are shit. Because, when there's some of the producers that you'll find a bottle and you're like, oof.
They're incredible, and that's that's the beauty of wine. In every part of the world, you have some amazing wine. Thinking of some Vega Sicilia also, which really left me with some amazing.
I tried it for the first time recently. That's been one of my bucket list wines. As I had a 1995 Vega Sicilia Único, and I had like. In Spanish, we say un dedito. I had one fingers of that wine in the glass, maybe an ounce, and I nursed that as if it was the antidote to cure whatever disease I would ever have in my life. It was one of the most spectacular. So yeah, I get that, and I also think it's important for anyone, no matter what your job is, to figure out some diversity. If you're in the music industry and you work in hip hop, figure out what's happening in the world of country music, rock music. Learn about all the other music because it's gonna definitely impact the way that you see hip hop. Whether you work in French wine, it's important for you to try wine from all over the world to find out what innovation, what's similar, what's different, what I like, what I don't like. I think that's a really important thing in life to do.
I can't agree anymore with what we just said. Actually, yeah,
it's essential. How are you able to to work for this winery if you don't know what the neighbors' wines taste like? Beyond, it's I think it's very important. So you mentioned you were born in Paris.
Yes, born and raised. Yeah.
So your perfect day in Paris. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can stop somewhere for a glass of wine somewhere as well along the road. What does your perfect day in Paris look like for one day?
Perfect day would start actually. I think the perfect day for me is really again like no coincidence. It would be on the right bank. Going to Saint-Germain-le-Marais, enjoying the architecture, and just going there, sitting at a cafe, having a glass of wine. Do some people watching because it's always fun, and just enjoy life and at a pace that's quite
Is there a place you go to every time you're in Paris? You're like, I have to try to go to my favorite coffee shop or my favorite pastisserie, or is there something that you're like, I always try to go, even though I can't always go?
I always try to explore, actually, and I because I've been living here now for a long time, although it doesn't sound like it, but I've been living here in the US for a long time. I really trust, my friends and who are still there and explore different, areas, restaurants, and but I really love, all this area of Saint-Germain, and it's still beautiful, and I think recently in France, people could get a glimpse during the Olympic Games, of how beautiful, Paris is and what it could offer, and for me, more especially now that I live here, I have a different look, on where I grew up where everything was kind of, I took it for granted, and I really enjoyed it now, and I enjoy, the difference of, way of living, culture, food, and really enjoying the best of the both life, in the US and in France, and Bordeaux for that is actually quite nice because you have
I can't wait to go.
The way of life of Bordeaux is very different from Paris. When I grew up, and it's really nice. And if you go to Bordeaux, you need to go to Saint-Emilion, which is a medieval village.
I'm going.
It's a UNESCO,
I'm gonna
and then
stalk
when you're
you.
in Saint-Emilion, we'll kidnap you for a few hours, because we're only not even a couple of miles from Angelus, a couple of miles from Saint-Emilion, and you're gonna love it. I can assure you that Saint-Emilion village is absolutely charming, gorgeous, and it looks like the time stopped, and you just want to enjoy it,
Do you have because we have a pretty decent audience in Miami? What is your current favorite restaurant in Miami?
I like actually. There's one restaurant which I really like is Fiola, which is
Fiola. Oh yeah, it's great.
Coral Gable. They have a fantastic wine list. The food is actually really good, and that's a place where I like to go.
Yeah, that's Fiola's a great spot in Miami. Well,
It's more quiet. It's not South Beach. It's Coral Gable. It's a bit more quiet. If you want a bit more action, you go to South Beach, and then you can go. You have many options there where
yeah, I like Macchialina and Biblos. But if I'm going to South Beach, but Fiola is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Ariete is another phenomenal restaurant in Coconut. Oh my God, I could talk about Miami restaurants. I like to end the show the same way every time. The only thing we don't get back in life is time.
Yes.
And I want to thank you and acknowledge you for spending a little bit of your precious time here with me and then with the audience at Kill the Bottle Podcast. Guys, please check out any of the wines that are produced by Angelus. They are just, it is heritage, it is iconic, it is an opportunity to really sink your teeth into the marrow of what French wine is from Saint-Emilion. Thank you so much to Yves for being here.
Thank you, Eddie.
And thank you so much for opening this 2015. I may stick around a little bit after I press the stop button. So that I get a little more.
We will enjoy this bottle. Cheers.
So cheers, please. Cheers to that. For the folks at home, please like, rate, review, subscribe. I will be tagging Chateau Angelus on Instagram. Please give them a follow. And for that special occasion, for the graduation, for your dad turning 50, if they wanted to explore some really, really phenomenal wine from Bordeaux, you know where to go. So cheers. See you guys next week.